Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another session of our COVID-19 webinar series. I'm Davide Barnia, Project Manager and a Scottish branch representative of the Italian Chamber of Commerce and Industry for the UK. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this informative webinar organized with the Consulate General of Italy for Scotland and Northern Ireland and the COMITES for Scotland and Northern Ireland, which I would like to thank. This afternoon, we will be joined by a very special guest, McKee, Minister for Trade, Investment and Innovation of the Scottish Government. I will just give you an idea of the agenda of tonight's webinar. So we will open with few words from the President of the Italian Chamber of Commerce, Alessandro Belluzzo, and the Italian Consulate, Fabio Monaco, followed by Minister McKee's lecture. At the end of it, some key Italian stakeholders across Scotland from a number of sectors, such as clean energy, aerospace, food and drink, hospitality, legal, and international freight forward, will ask Minister McKee some question of interest for the wider business community. At the end of it, if we will have time, I will ask some other question I gather from the audience watching this webinar tonight. So without any further delay, I would like to give the word to the President of the Italian Chamber of Commerce, Alessandro Belluzzo. President Belluzzo, the floor is yours, and enjoy the webinar.
Good afternoon. Thank you, David. Of course, it's a pleasure. A very brief greeting from me today after things has been said by David. So again, thank you very much to Fabio Monaco, Consulate General of Italy for Scotland and Northern Ireland, and the President Adriano De Marco of COMITES. Of course, special thanks is to McKee, Minister for Trade, Investment and Innovation for the Scottish Government, especially under these circumstances. Thank you very much for your availability. As Davide was saying, our chamber remain open to and active, even though we all experiencing COVID-19. We're trying to be informative through webinars series as the one of today. And I expect our members and businesses opportunities to ask many questions to our Leonardo Contini, IF's Worldwide, and RAG's Dimaggio Monger and Low speakers. And everything will change, of course, but our investment and trade and business relationship will remain crucial to us and to you, members. And I think it's very important that we have someone like Mr. McKee from the Scottish Government to lecture us about the objective and to have an expert guidance and practical advice during this crisis. So again, I'm very grateful for this to the Minister and the Scottish Government, and we look forward to work even more together through the other opportunities such as Brexit, that of course today is the last day after the not extension of the transition period. So we have all to be prepared for the next 6 months and then for January 2021 to working together in a different way on different projects. Again, we feel like things will remain open and cooperative, even if we think about the COP26 in Glasgow, it will be a very good opportunity to work together as countries. So once again, thank you very much and enjoy our webinar today. Thank you.
Thank you, President Belluzzo. I will now give floor to the Italian Consul for Scotland and Northern Ireland, Fabio Monaco.
Good afternoon, and thank you to you all, and many thanks for taking part in this webinar. Today's event follows, as Davide said, from preceding webinars that we organized jointly to support and inform the Italian community in Scotland and Northern Ireland during the difficult situation resulting from the worldwide pandemic which broke out in February. In the last few months, the consulate has faced a significant increase in requests for assistance from both resident and non-resident Italian nationals. Over and above repatriation requests, we have witnessed the distress of those who living here with their family and having lost their job are facing great difficulties in their daily lives. So in the course of two previous webinars, one for Scotland and another one for Northern Ireland, we have sought to illustrate to our fellow nationals the measures put in place by the local authorities to financially assist those who have been affected by the emergency, whilst also reminding them of the continued need to register in the EU settlement scheme. But in Scotland, there are also present a great number of Italian companies and freelance professionals who, by virtue of their activities, covering different key sectors of the local economy, contribute to nurture and strengthen the link between Scotland and Italy that we hope will continue to grow in the future. Preserving and sustaining this heritage is now more necessary than ever in the light of the economic and financial implications of the ongoing emergency that, of course, combine with inevitable changes resulting from the exit of the United Kingdom from the European Union. Before leaving the floor to the speakers, let me first of all thank Minister McKee for accepting our invitation. Thank you, Minister, for finding time in your agenda to take part of our event. Further evidence, if ever needed, of the attention that the Scottish Government have devoted and has devoted and continues to devote to the Italian community, one of the oldest and most deeply rooted European communities in Scotland. Heartfelt thanks to the Italian Chamber of Commerce in the United Kingdom, represented by the President Alessandro Belluzzo, whom I hope to have the pleasure to meet in person soon, and of course Davide Barnia, as well as to the COMITES represented by President Adriano Marco, and to all its members who are always attentive and committed to meeting the needs of our community. Thank you again and enjoy the webinar.
Monaco. And without any further delay, I would like to welcome Minister McKee and give him the floor for this speech.
Okay, grazie Davide, and thank you also to President Belluzzo and to Consul General Monaco, and it's an absolute pleasure to be able to address you and the members of the Chamber of Commerce this afternoon, and to talk through issues of importance for the people and businesses in Italy and in Scotland. And first of all, I think I just want to reflect back on the journey we've all come on over the past 4 months or so. I was in Italy in the earlier part of this year, visiting family, and before the crisis took hold, and then I watched with horror, frankly, as some of the situation unfolded across the north of Italy, and as we understood that this would spread to Scotland and eventually as well. So I worked with admiration as the health service in Italy bore the brunt of this challenge and responded admirably. And I think the fact that you went through that stood us all in good stead when our time came to deal with that health crisis. We are all now moving through that process. We are delighted that Scotland is following many other countries in coming to what we hope is the end, or the latter part certainly, of the health crisis. But as a consequence of the lockdown measures we've implemented and the response of the Scottish population to those. But of course that has engendered a significant economic crisis, which we all have to deal with. And it's in that context that we have this discussion, of course, by the means of remote digital connectivity, which is becoming, of course, an increasingly central part of our lives over the past weeks and months. I want to reflect back, first of all, on the work before COVID that we had undertaken. I had a ministerial visit to Italy back in February 2019 and had some excellent meetings with a number of businesses and institutions in Italy at that time, working with our SDI office in Milano, who set up the visit, and it was great to meet with investors who have interest in Scotland and potential partners for Scottish businesses to export to. And later in 2019, we published a trading nation, which was the Scottish Government's plan to grow our exports and further increase our internationalisation. Italy, as you can imagine, figured very largely in that plan. It's one of the key target markets for Scottish exports and Scottish growth in trade, as you would expect, and a number of key sectoral interests align that are very important to both of our countries. Food and drink is clearly important, and many of the supply chains that support the food and drink sector, but across technology, life science, energy, and many other sectors, there is great cooperation and potential for further growth of business opportunities. So that is the backdrop of the relationship between Scotland and Italy in trade. As we see it, it's something that we continue to build on despite the crisis, and want to make sure that those strengths figure largely in our relationship going forward as we weather this crisis and come out the other end. Later this year, we will be publishing our inward investment plan for Scotland, which again will take a very analytically driven approach to identifying the sectors and the markets and the type of investors we want to work with to build Scottish business, and to partner internationally with those of like mind who are keen to work with us to mutual benefit. And again, I have no doubt that Italy and the sectors that Italy is strong in will figure very largely in that plan as we go forward. President Beluzzo mentioned Brexit, and we can remember back to the days when Brexit was the most important issue on the economic horizon before the advent of COVID. But of course, we shouldn't forget that Brexit does still cast a shadow over both our economies and our potential opportunities to do business. It's worth reiterating that the Scottish Government, unlike the UK Government, takes a very positive proactive view of our relationships with our European neighbours. We are hugely keen to reduce and remove any barriers that Brexit may be put in place, and to minimise those barriers, and to continue with building on our trade and wider relationships, both with, as I said, our European neighbours, but also very importantly with European citizens and businesses that are based and working, living, studying in Scotland. So our perspective on this, and the message we continue to put forward to the UK Government, is that the Brexit deal should be as soft as possible, if we speak in those terms. It should maintain alignment as much as possible. It should enable trade with as few barriers as possible between our countries, frankly with a view for Scotland at least, if not the UK as a whole, to rejoin the EU in due course in future. So that's the economic backdrop that we currently operate in. Of course, there's been an immediate crisis with regards to the COVID situation, and the Scottish Government has stepped up to the plate to support business as best they were able to, with the powers that we have within the UK context. Clearly, a number of programmes have been rolled out by the UK Government, and our work has been to identify where there are gaps within those programmes and additional support is required. So through a whole range of mechanisms, we have delivered to the full amount of the money that came from the UK Government has been passed on to Scottish businesses. We have delivered more than that and identified additional areas of support where the Scottish Government was able to step in and support and fill gaps in the support mechanisms that were in place at a UK level. As up to now, we've issued more than 80,000 grants, valued at almost £900 million from the Scottish Government in schemes that are supplementary to UK Government schemes. Many of you will be aware of those and will have benefited from those schemes. But as I said, they've been very much focused on specific aspects of Scotland's economy that are important to us, and to make sure that businesses are able to benefit, and self-employed individuals as well, suffering hardship, to be able to benefit from that support. Clearly now our attention is turning to what the future looks like. You will be aware that last week we published the advisory group on economic recovery that the Scottish Government had asked to come forward with proposals, publish their report, and the Scottish Government is now considering those with a view to responding by the end of July with a response to that. So that will lay out across the whole range of areas that work is required to build on the economic recovery in Scotland, to make sure that we minimise the impact, the negative impact on Scottish businesses and the Scottish economy, but also to identify opportunities where there is scope for Scottish businesses to increase business activity in areas where, for example, digital technology, life science, and other areas where there will be increased opportunities as a consequence of COVID. So that work is continuing apace. We are very keen to engage with businesses and business organisations around that agenda to take on board specific suggestions, and I think it's true to say that the solution and building the future beyond the COVID crisis will be a consequence of the public sector working very closely with the private sector, something that's very important to us, and we're very keen to do that. You will not be surprised to learn that the green recovery figures in a very central way to how we see that future. Innovation figures very highly. Scotland views ourselves, rightly so, as being an innovative nation, and we're very focused on sectors of the economy where that innovation can shine through, building on the great world-class expertise of our university and college sectors, well recognised, and leveraging that into sectors where we have inherent strengths on a global basis. So that is how we intend to approach the economic recovery. We understand, of course, there will be huge challenges in the short term to provide jobs, and that is something we're very focused on. But a key part of that, as I say, is understanding the strengths of the Scottish economy and how we can leverage those more on an international stage. And I have no doubt that our close relationship with Italian businesses in Scotland, Italian investors in Scotland, and with Italy will figure very largely in that recovery as it evolves. I'll stop there because I want to allow time, obviously, for questions and discussions, and hand back to you, Davide, to take the discussion forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McKee. I feel like you raised many captivating points on which to reflect. But I would like to go straight away to our first question, and it is from the green energy sector, and in particular to Luca Bragoli, Head of International and Institutional Affairs of ERG Group. So Luca, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you, Davide. Thank you, Minister, for this terrific opportunity to present ERG, a family business with 8 years of experience in the energy sector. We have transitioned from the oil sector to the power sector with a strong focus on renewables. And we are today the first onshore wind power operator in Italy and one of the leaders on the European market. ERG aims to grow in the UK, which represents a key market for ERG in terms of investment, allocation, and development of portfolio. We have now, today, a pipeline of more than 200 megawatts of fully consented onshore wind projects in Scotland and Northern Ireland, of which 120 megawatts under construction. And we are committed to grow further. So with our portfolio, we are able to make £180 million of investment, which is potential to power more than 150,000 UK households. So ERG's ambitions are closely aligned with the Scottish Government's energy strategy, which aims to champion Scotland's renewable energy potential. In such a perspective, we believe that it's important to facilitate the growth and development of new projects in Scotland. How? by providing a long-term view on the government's plan for the transition to renewable energy. This is more on the UK government, but by reducing also the cost and the time for permitting processes for wind energy projects. Having said that, I come to our questions, which is aimed to know which financial or policy measures are Scottish Government looking to take in order to continue to attract the international investment necessary to reach climate and energy targets, and what role and targets for the onshore wind industry in such a process? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Luca. It's a great question, and it's, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, the transition to a green future, renewable energy, is absolutely central to the Scottish Government's economic strategy. You will, of course, be aware that at a political level, we have signalled very clearly the commitment of the Scottish Government to renewables. We were one of the first countries to declare the climate emergency, something obviously that hasn't gone away as a consequence of COVID. It's still very much a huge challenge for us nationally and globally, of course. And if anything, COVID has perhaps brought into even sharper focus the importance of getting those fundamental issues right, and the economy doesn't sit in isolation from everything else. So I think that's redoubled our focus on the importance of renewable energy. You will be aware of the many businesses, and you are one, and it's hugely welcome, that are making the transition from Scotland's expertise in the oil and gas sector and using that expertise and that technology to make us a world leader in renewable energy. And I've had the pleasure of travelling over the past 2 years to many parts of the world and highlighting and showcasing Scotland's considerable strengths in the technology around about renewable energy, and in particular offshore deep water expertise that we can deploy globally. And it's great to hear the work that you're doing in Italy on renewable energy, and I'm sure there'll be many opportunities for Scottish businesses to support in that activity. You'll be aware that the latest data published in the last few days highlighted the fact that Scotland is now producing more than 90% of our electricity consumed from renewable sources, which is great news as we move towards 100% target, and then beyond that to our commitments of net zero by 2045, and 5 years earlier than the UK, and the various stepping stones towards that as we start to decarbonise heat and transport at scale. So it's something we're hugely committed to, and it's something that we put great store in. And our investments in innovation opportunities in the north east of Scotland, in particular, round about the transition and support for businesses and support for the sector to identify innovative solutions as a key part of that. It's worth mentioning the work we're doing on the green investment portfolio. So what is happening there? This was a commitment in our last programme for government that I am leading, and we're taking forward at pace to identify green energy opportunities, investable opportunities within Scotland. We are working towards a total of a £3 billion investment portfolio to make sure those are market ready, to work with the providers who are bringing forward those proposals, to put them into good shape to then take to investors as a package, as a portfolio, to highlight and leverage in investment to Scotland in the renewable sector. So that's one piece of work. And it's also, of course, worth mentioning the Scottish National Investment Bank, which will be set up in the coming months through the course of the rest of this year, which will be focused on a number of missions, but the green mission, the climate change challenge, is absolutely central to the mission statements of the Scottish National Investment Bank. It will be leveraging government investment to, as I say, leveraging more private sector investment to focus on infrastructure projects and also support for SMEs in those target sectors. And green energy is absolutely central, as I say, to that. So across a whole range of those activities, sorry, of course, I should mention, we launched a package of £66 million of support to kickstart our green recovery in the last few days as part of that whole package of measures the government is implementing to support the sector. So across the whole range, from the political commitment at COP26, as was mentioned earlier, and the webinar, which is coming to Scotland, delayed, but it's coming to Glasgow next year now, and the commitment we've made round about investment in the sector, you can rest assured that the Scottish Government is hugely committed to the transition to renewable energy, and hugely encouraged by the work that the ERG Group is doing, and our willingness to continue to work with you to deliver that green future for us all, and to look for export opportunities for that technology for Scottish businesses internationally.
Thank you, Minister. That's very reassuring. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luca. Thank you very much, Minister. I would like now to go to the aerospace sector and to Alan Colquhoun, University Liaison and Emerging Technologies Manager for Leonardo. So, Alan, the floor is yours.
Right. Good evening, Minister. A pleasure to hear you talking just now, and thanks to the Consulate General, the President, and David for arranging this. I'm here this evening representing the aerospace sector in Scotland, and Leonardo is obviously a major part of that and the leading Italian company in that sector in Scotland. And I was wondering, reflecting on your portfolio, if you'd like to tell us how the Scottish Government are going to use innovation to help with the economic recovery.
Yeah, I'm delighted to, Alan, and it's good to see you again, to meet you again virtually.
Yeah.
Clearly, the aerospace sector's got particular challenges. The impact of COVID on the travel sector, as we know, has been enormous. And what that recovery looks like, we're not sure clearly. And whatever happens, it's going to be longer than the recovery of many other sectors, and that's clearly a concern. And that's impacting a number of businesses globally, and we are not immune from that in Scotland. As you'll be aware, there's a number of businesses in Scotland in the sector that are going through very difficult times at the moment. In terms of the aerospace sector itself, we have set up an aerospace sector response group chaired by my colleague, Minister for Business, Jamie Hepburn, which is working together with businesses, with the sector, with trade unions to identify the issues, the challenges, and understand and formulate responses to that. We are very keen in specific instances where there is challenges to businesses, where they're having to downsize, as a consequence of this, to be as imaginative as possible, to work with those businesses, to look for opportunities to develop other activities as a consequence of that, and to work imaginatively in a collaborative way to do that. We have clearly some examples in the past where businesses have gone through difficult situations, and the Scottish Government has worked imaginatively to try and provide solutions to lessen that impact. I can point to what we did with the Michelin situation in Dundee. I can point to what we've done with Liberty Steel in Scotland, and a number of other examples of that, where we have taken a very proactive approach to working with the sector and businesses to try and mitigate the impact. So on the negative side, that's something, if you like, where we're very keen to focus, understand the opportunity for innovation parks, understand that they're focused on the sector, understand the opportunity for start-up businesses as a consequence, and to leverage support where necessary to deliver on that, to minimise any impact and keep the sector at least in a condition where it can come back when the time is right. In terms of the wider piece round about the economy, the innovation aspects of the economy, you'll be well aware that that's something that's been central to our economic strategy for a while. The commitment evidenced through the setting up of our innovation centres across Scotland, working as part of our universities, but with a remit to engage very actively with businesses, both established businesses, large businesses like Leonardo, but also very much with our SME businesses, and with start-up and opportunity spin-out businesses from universities. So those innovation centres have been key to bridging that transition between our, as I said earlier, world-class expertise in technology in our universities, and making sure the transition of that into the business and industrial sectors is accelerated. That commitment continues. That commitment, if anything, definitely accelerates, because we recognise that innovation is going to be absolutely key to pulling us through this this current challenge that we all face. We work very closely, as you'll be aware, with Innovate UK at a UK level. We work to attract as much investment through that route as we possibly can to support innovation in Scotland. I'm very pleased that of the 7 projects that were identified in the last week by Innovate UK as winning awards through their Strengthened Places programme, 2 of those, so that would be 3 times our population share, were won by Scottish projects. So we're delighted that that's happened. We're delighted that we're punching well above our weight and winning those awards at a UK level. It talks to the strength of Scottish innovation across a range of sectors, but the aerospace sector and the cluster we have there is something we're very keen to promote, and as I said, to work with the sector to help it through these difficult times and into a bright future beyond the COVID impact.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you, Alan. Shall I now to go to Mario Gizzi, Director of DRG Di Maggio's Restaurant Group for the food and drink and hospitality sector, which of course plays an important role for Italian businesses in Scotland. So Mario, the floor is yours.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. As introduced, my name is Mario Gizzi. I am a co-owner and founder of the family business, which started in 1985. We now have approximately 28 outlets throughout Scotland, ostensibly in Glasgow, Edinburgh and Aberdeen, although we do have a hotel in Fort William and also some surrounding suburbs of those cities I've just mentioned. I did mention the word family business, and we employ approximately 1,300 people, and we feel responsible for those employees and their families going forward. And one of the concerns that we have is we're about to open our doors, having been protected to an extent by furlough so far, and it's a wee bit like a child leaving the side of the swimming pool. We're concerned about what's going to happen in the future, and we might have good sites, but what we cannot legislate for is consumer confidence. And we really want to know essentially what do Holyrood and indeed Westminster plan to give retail a boost, and hospitality industry in particular a boost, given that England seems to have opened about 40%. And we as a company can't afford to trade at those levels. It just doesn't work. Hospitality is very labour intensive. We need to be operating at 75% to break even, and that's even with the rates relief we've got going forward. So I'd like to know what's outlined to just give the economy a boost and give some confidence to our customers.
Okay, thanks, Mario. I think it's obviously important for us to recognise the challenge the sector faces. I frankly feel for you. It's not an easy place that you're in. The hospitality, leisure, tourism sectors have been particularly hard hit by the crisis. It's something that we recognised early on. You've highlighted the support we identified round about rate support and the grants that were put out to businesses in the sector, the specific creative tourism and hospitality hardship fund that the Scottish Government set up to support the sector, and also the pivotal Enterprise Resilience Fund, which was set up to support businesses that were viable before the crisis, but were very, very vulnerable to it. And I can say we haven't published the sectoral data on that, but a number of businesses that have from the tourism, hospitality, leisure sector have benefited from that. So we have worked hard to support the sector as best we can within the current limitations that we have. So I think in terms of the short term, that has absolutely been the focus, and to keep the sector as best we can in as good a shape as we can for the return, understanding the huge challenges it places on businesses like yourselves. I can tell you my ministerial colleague Fergus Ewan is is a ferocious, I think would be the word, advocate of the sector, the food and drink sector and the tourism sector in terms of fighting for every scrap he can, and he's been very successful in getting the sector's challenges highlighted to other colleagues to make sure that we take them very seriously as we have done and provide the support as best we can. I think that the tricky part clearly is the part we're in now. I think the worst thing we can do, frankly, is to open up too early and then have to lock down again. I think everybody recognises that, and getting that balance right is absolutely critical to the medium and long-term success of the sector. It's a challenge because we're working with the information we have, and clearly we don't have full information on what is going to happen next. We're working to understand the virus, how it behaves and how it transmits, and the health implications of that and what it can do. And we saw obviously globally in Italy and in the UK in the early days, the speed at which the virus can get hold and rampage through a society very quickly if unchecked. We have obviously worked very hard in Scotland to control the virus, and it's been great credit to Scottish business and to the Scottish population. The level of compliance has been exceptional. That's led us to a place now in Scotland where we have had 4 days. Today we reported, unfortunately, a small number of deaths, but we had 4 days in a row where there were no deaths reported in Scotland as a consequence. We have an R number that continues to reduce. We have very small numbers now of individuals, thankfully, in intensive care, and that number is reducing all the time. Our estimates of the number of individuals in Scotland that have COVID is moving from the tens of thousands into the thousands and very quickly down into the hundreds, and we see that trajectory continuing over the next week or two. So that is very welcome progress. The challenge is how we move forward from that position into a position where we can allow things to get back to normal as best we can, and not end up in a situation where we have to reverse those lessenings and to reimpose lockdown. We've seen that in many instances globally, where countries or states in the US in particular have had to reimpose lockdowns. We see it in the UK and the situation unfolding in Leicester, unfortunately, over the last couple of days, where lockdown has been having to be reimposed in a local level. So those are the concerns. That is a tightrope we walk. We are very keen to work with the sector as we are to develop guidelines that allow us to move forward. We obviously don't want to delay that the loosening of those restrictions any longer than is necessary, but we are very focused on the elimination of the virus. So it puts us in a position where we are able to open up with confidence, open up as fast as possible, and allow businesses to deal with that situation. In terms of the specifics, clearly the phased route map is there. The information on the specifics of that is laid out as best we can, and the clarity on that is delivered clearly as we approach each milestone and each review point with the sector-specific guidance. We try to be as open as we can about that, but again, clearly the question about what is going to happen in the future is, of course, entirely dependent on how the virus behaves. So the combination of how effective the measures have been and how the virus behaves are the factors that make that uncertain. So we want to give as much transparency as possible. We try to do it as best we can, but the thing that really is at the root of all this is elimination. Put ourselves in a position where when we do loosen up, we're not having to go back into reverse gear and undo those loosening of restrictions because the virus starts to take hold again. That's what guides us, and we're, as I say, very keen to work with the sector to make that as painless as possible in what I fully appreciate is a hugely challenging situation for businesses in the sector.
I appreciate that, but I'm back to the word stimulus. You know, we really need something to focus on and to help us. Things like a VAT reduction for our sector. We've done it in Germany. It can be sector specific. I know that has to come from Westminster, but we need a voice, and that voice has got to be from Holyrood, especially for us. And I did mention rates, and just on a very personal basis, when we employ so many people, the rates relief or the rates grants for last year were capped at 51k RV. Now, to be honest, I think I've got one out of my sites, two out of my sites that qualified for that, because everything we have is city centre, and our rateable values are higher than that. So we need help.
Yeah, no, I understand. We need
help. We need help first of all to survive. But if you look at the next period, we need help. We need stimulus like VAT reliefs, like things like that, to keep us going as the customers gain confidence. Because potentially we could be, it could be next April by the time we start getting back to what I'll call our old normal, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely it does, and I hear your comments, and just to talk through them, you're absolutely right. VAT reduction and a focused VAT reduction would be extremely helpful. That is something the UK government controls. It's something we have called for. It's something that was an issue in the report from the Economic Recovery Group that came out, the Scottish Government's Economic Recovery Group that came out in the last few days. So it's very much on the radar and very much something that we're focused on asking for. In terms of the confidence of the sector, you're right. I think the best thing that we can do there is to get ourselves in a position where the virus, frankly, is eliminated, so that people do have the confidence to go out. They're not looking over their shoulder. They're not worried about being in a high-risk group and not being able to go out and enjoy themselves in one of your 5 restaurants because they are concerned that the virus is still out there. So I think that is, frankly, the number one thing we need to do is get the virus off the table, so that people have the confidence to go out and not worry about that, and to be able to go out and spend the money they haven't been spending in the past few months in restaurants. So I think that, and if you look at the population, clearly there are people who have been in a position where they've been able to continue earning and haven't been spending because of the restrictions, and there is pent-up demand there, and we want to be able to release that. There are other parts of the population, unfortunately, where the threat of losing their livelihood is very real, and that's something we're hugely focused on as part of the economic recovery plan. So giving that confidence to consumers, and I think you got to it, that's the key, is something that we recognise is important, and I think getting the virus off the table is an issue, so that people have the confidence to not worry about it is probably the most important part of that. And I very much look forward to coming along with family and friends and colleagues to one of your fine restaurants and giving you the custom that you deserve as soon as it's safe to do so.
Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you, Mario. From the same sector, we actually have now Carina Contini, Director of Contini George Street, the Scottish and Cafe Restaurant and Cannonball Restaurant and Bar. I have another question from the same sector.
Thank you, everybody. Mirror what Mario says. We're a much smaller scale. We have 3 restaurants in the city centre of Edinburgh, very highly dependent on the seasonality of the city. The festivals, the Tattoo, the Fringe are all our partners, and we will be very, our normal doesn't exist any longer, as it does for very few people, but it is that the city will take a very long time to come back. We took the decision to focus on one of our USPs, which has been importing direct from Italy for the last 17 years. We have 1 to 2 pallets of fruit and vegetables that arrive every week, a beautiful pallet of peaches and figs and all the lovely things that we think of as sunshine in Italy arrive today, because we realise that our customers are not going to come back quickly. They are probably slightly older, or they're certainly conservative, and they are not they're not going to rush at changing their behaviour, having been told to stay at home. So our business is trying to take what we do to them. So we are importing, and then we're delivering baskets of fruit and vegetables and our food to them at home. Now, obviously, with the Brexit conversation, that the whole delivery and import, well, the whole import challenge was looking incredibly difficult. Are there any anticipated changes from the pre-COVID-19 Brexit import policies that are anticipated now that we are in this even more complicated world of Brexit? And if there are there any possibilities that we could actually bypass Dover and come direct to a Scottish port and perhaps make the journey easier?
Good questions. And first of all, you're making me very hungry. Listen to your description of your fine Italian produce being imported, and commend you on your innovative approach to trying to work through this. I have to say that, of course, the Brexit scenario, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, hasn't gone away. It continues to be another cloud on the horizon. The UK government is, we believe, misguided in continuing to push this forward without extending the transition period, which is going to present challenges, additional challenges for businesses. The rules around import clearly are controlled at a UK level. So in terms of what those tariffs look like, in terms of what those regulations look like, that will be controlled by the UK government. We will, as I said earlier, continue to push them at every opportunity. And earlier this afternoon, I had a video conference call with the UK Trade Minister Greg Hans, where I made these very points that we believe they should be pursuing as soft a Brexit as possible to minimise the impact on business. So that is the area of focus we have in terms of trying to influence the UK government. But in terms of those regulations, in terms of those tariffs, and in terms of what that transition in the Brexit situation looks like, they have that control. In terms of the logistics and the importation, it's an interesting question because it's something that we were pursuing actively, and it came out of our export strategy actually, where we looked at Scottish producers exporting produce and the fact that so much of it has to go to ports and airports in the southeast of England, and the same applies to imports. So I think we've got as government a convening power to look across different sectors, to look at opportunities with freight forward and logistics businesses, to understand where there is potential for us to look if there is market failure, if you want to call it that, where there could be export or import from Scottish ports, but it isn't happening because various dots need to be joined for there to be a critical mass to make it worth somebody's while to take that up as a project. So it's something that we had a focus on pre-COVID, and it's something we'll return to understand what that dynamic looks like. How much has been exported from Scotland through ports in the rest of the UK? How much has been imported to Scotland likewise? And what scope is there to join up some of that to make it commercially attractive for businesses to be able to operate more direct import-export mechanisms to Scottish ports and airports. So it's something that's on the radar. I'm delighted that it's something you're focused and thinking about, and we're very happy to keep you and others appraised of that work as it moves forward.
Okay, thank you.
Very much, Karina. Thank you, Minister. So kind of the same topic, we have now representative of international freight industry, David White, founding partner and director of operational from IFS Worldwide Ltd. So David, up to you.
Thanks, David, and thanks for inviting me this afternoon. Good afternoon, all. Thanks, Minister, as well, for the speeches and what have you. I'm going to basically continue on from Karina's points there. We are an international freight forwarding company concentrating specifically on freight between Italy and Scotland. So we run on a normal period between 10 and 20 trucks directly between Italy and Scotland, all of them containing various shipments of various from various industries. Unfortunately not for the temperature controlled stuff though, but we do run lots of trucks every week directly between Italy and Scotland. Each of these trucks, just to clear one of Karina's points there, comes into Dover. They either come in via ferries, it's always Calais-Dover or Calais-Folkestone through the tunnel. There is no direct ferry service for trucks into Scotland. The highest we've got up is Newcastle, which is mainly passenger, then we have Hull. So yeah, all of our trucks are coming in via England. So my point, my specific point was, everybody in the freight forwarding industry has been preparing for a long time for worst case scenario Brexit. So obviously the hardest deal possible, because nobody has made any specific points on whether there is going to be a free trade movement or not between the UK and Europe. So my point is, everybody in preparation for Brexit, all our clients were quite confused when generally the exporting side of things, but also the importing side of things. Importing is going to be easier, but up until now, when we've had this trade going between Europe and Scotland, there have been no customs procedures to do. Now, we don't have a trade deal. There's no sign of a trade deal coming, and I'd like to know if we're going to get more time to prepare ourselves for these customs procedures, and mainly for teaching our clients how to go about these customs procedures. Our clients who import and export on a regular basis don't have to deal with this stuff, and pre-COVID were in an absolute panic. I can imagine now everybody's been concentrating on the COVID situation and how we're managing to get through this COVID situation. But when we come to the end of the COVID situation, we're going to have to prepare even quicker for this Brexit situation. And I'm wondering what the Scottish Government can do about helping us prepare our clients, or helping the Scottish importers and exporters prepare for Brexit. There seems to be very little information around, and are we going to get a little bit more time to help prepare?
Look, first of all, in terms of the overall situation with Brexit, as I said earlier, we continue to recognise that as a mistake. And again, what I'm hearing from businesses on this call is only reinforcing that belief that it's not something that should be happening at all, and it certainly isn't something that the UK government should be continuing with at this point in time. And you're absolutely right, the lack of clarity around about what that deal looks like is even more concerning, because, as you say, the opportunity for businesses and frankly for ourselves to prepare for that, it makes that much more challenging. So at that level, we continue to argue the case, and we continue to make the case on behalf of business in Scotland and wider, of course, that the situation is not acceptable. There should be, at the very least, an extension to the transition period to enable these issues to be ironed out and give business more notice and more time to prepare for them. In terms of, within that context, of course, we need to do the best we can. And the Scottish Government has been focused through the Brexit process on what we can do to work with business in terms of information. We've got the Prepare for Brexit web portal, which you're welcome to look at. We've got our agencies are focused on providing support and advice to businesses on specific aspects of that as it affects sectors and various different types of business challenges that are there, and be able to signpost where we can to resolutions or solutions that may be there. But frankly, to be frank with you, clearly, because we don't know the shape of that Brexit deal yet, there are a number of unknowns. So we can only work with businesses to the extent that the UK government has made clear what that situation would look like. And I know there's particular challenges round about your own sector, the freight forwarders, logistics sector, in terms of the challenges that presents in the cross-border scenario, and challenges around about labour, drivers, and time delays, and many other issues that are going to be there and going to need to be addressed. So what I would say is, would encourage you to have a look at what's there online. We've got Scottish Government officials on here that can reach out to you after the call and have sector-specific conversations around about what resources are there. There is money there which has been targeted at supporting businesses that want to prepare for Brexit plans and help them with getting them professional advice to help do that. So there is some resource there for that as well. So as I say, officials will reach out, we'll make that connection, and other businesses are on here that have questions around about that, the Prepare for Brexit resource, the toolkit, the checklist, the support from the agencies, Scottish Government agencies, and the financial support to help with mitigation plans is in place. In terms of freight, we have continued. My colleague Michael Matheson, who's got responsibility for transport, and Transport Scotland have engaged with the UK Government to help us best understand as best we can what solutions are in place for the sector and what those look like, and allow us to be able to communicate those back to Scottish businesses. So that work is happening. And I suppose the final point would be that in answer to the previous question to Karina, I talked about other solutions that we can help to look at more proactively in terms of direct links. It doesn't take away from the Brexit challenge, but it does perhaps makes things slightly easier from a logistics point of view. And I think our officials would like to have a conversation with you in that regard to explore and understand where those challenges are specifically as well.
Yeah, I think can I just say as well, we did receive some funding from the government for new software, for buying new software to handle the customs procedures, and we also got some money through as well to train our staff, which was greatly appreciated. We were wondering where we were going to get the money from, and it was given to us by the government, so that was really appreciated. Just to mention, there used to be also for Karina's point, there used to be a ferry service from Rosyth into Europe, and I found, running 20 trucks a week, I found none of our trucks could get those ferries. I looked obviously into taking these trucks off the roads in between Scotland and Dover to get them on this ferry, and it was priced perfectly. It cost exactly the same, and the timing was good. It's just the time the ferry left didn't permit us to load our vehicles and get to Italy in the same time. So
okay, yeah, I mean that's good feedback, and it's maybe something we need to look at in a bit more detail.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you, Minister. And finally, we have a last representative from the legal and self-employed sector, Mirella Marchini, solicitor and notary public from the private client department at Morgan Solicitors. Unfortunately, we cannot see her, but we should be able to.
Unfortunately, I don't know about that, but many thanks. Good evening to all. My name is Mirella Marchini. As Davide was saying, I'm a solicitor and dual qualified in Italian and Scots law, and I work for the Morgan Law Partnership. We provide a range of legal services, including conveyancing and wills, trusts, estates, and the rest. How many pivotal grants have been granted to Scottish legal firms? And what are the Scottish Government's criteria for awarding grants to successful applicants? Also, do you contemplate any further measures for Scottish self-employed and small businesses in the near future?
Yeah, good questions. Thank you for those. Just to talk about the Pivotal Fund, first of all, what happened was that when the UK Government support was rolled out, we identified a number of areas where there were Scottish specific challenges or challenges that we felt the UK Government wasn't responding to adequately, and we identified funds that we could use to support in those areas. Some of those I've talked about, the specific funds for creative and tourism sectors. specific support that wasn't available across the rest of the UK for newly self-employed individuals. There was a time cut off in the UK fund that we stepped in to fill the gap for newly self-employed people. And one of the significant interventions we made there, as you said, was the pivotal Enterprise Resilience Fund. That started off at £45 million, we then doubled it to 90 million and then increased it and further to 120 million. So it was a fairly significant intervention to support businesses there. We don't yet have the breakdown by sector. We are still finalising the fund and putting out grant letters, and we will publish soon the analysis by sector. So I don't have an answer in terms of the specifics round about the legal sector. What I can say in terms of your question round about what was the purpose of the fund and the targeting of it, there was really three criteria there. It was to look at businesses that were vital to the Scottish economy going forward, and where their failure would be a significant impact either on a national or a regional basis, but also businesses that had been viable prior to COVID, so were trading well before COVID and weren't in trouble prior to that, but had been impacted and were vulnerable as a consequence of COVID. So it was those three V's, if you like: vital, viable, and vulnerable as a consequence of COVID. That's where the targeting was done. The enterprise agencies worked together very effectively and in very short order to pull together a mechanism for identifying how we would be able to work through the applications, and there were many. We weren't able to fulfil and satisfy all the applications, but to identify the ones that most accurately fitted those criteria, and they worked through that process to identify the businesses that should benefit from the fund. I think the fact that we doubled the fund and then increased it by another 30 million kind of talks to how important it was to plug the gap for businesses that weren't receiving adequate support elsewhere. So that's the criteria around about how we targeted the fund. In terms of your other question about future measures for self-employed and small businesses, I've already talked to the newly self-employed hardship fund. That was something we had in Scotland but not elsewhere. This is a moving feast, if you like. We're continually looking at where the gaps are, where the opportunities for providing resource are, and how we marry those up to best effect. The £230 million return to work package that was unveiled recently has got a number of target sectors and businesses within that as well, and will continue to look for opportunities where there are challenges for businesses and sectors that we need to do something within the resources we've got, and continue to push the UK government, as we did today on the back of Boris Johnson's what we felt was fairly underwhelming announcement in terms of support for the economy, to push them and make the comparisons with what other countries are doing in this situation that have the powers to do that. So that's where we're at. This isn't the end. We would like to do more, and we'll continue to look for opportunities to do more as the situation unfolds.
Many thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you, Mirella. I'm conscious of time. I know that we are already running a bit late. Just to cover two other aspects that we've not touched during this conversation that we raised questions that we received. First one is, of course, COVID-19 and Brexit will have some expected impact on investment in R&D, education and research, which actually are some of the main topics that are most interest for Italian businesses interested in investing in Scotland. So can you say if you expect any impact on that, and if the Scottish Government will be ready to cap for it? The second question that I really briefly want to ask, if there is any news regarding any air bridge with Italy during this COVID-19, in order to ensure that people that want to make tourists but also making business in Scotland will be able to reach Scotland without the 14 days quarantine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, great questions. In terms of the R&D and investment, you're absolutely right. It's a concern. I think it's too early to say how that's going to fall. Scotland has been in a position where, within the UK and frankly globally, our R&D spend within higher education has been world class. Our R&D spend within business has lagged, but we set some ambitious targets on that a few years ago, and we were to double our R&D spend within the business sector, and through a number of measures, including targeted grants and other steps, we were actually running ahead of our plan. So we are seeing significant growth in business R&D in Scotland over the last 3 or 4 years, which was very welcome. How COVID impacts that, we will see. It's too early to say, but it's important, I think, to refer again to the investment plan that I spoke about earlier, and that is a piece of work that we were planning to launch actually last month, but delayed by COVID. It will be launched in the autumn, but it is very timely in the sense that it addresses head-on these questions. How do we encourage more investment to come in to Scotland's economy internationally? And it does that by looking at, in a very hard-headed way, where Scotland's global strengths are, in which sectors do we have genuine global strengths, either because of a combination of our great university technical expertise and industrial clusters that we've built, and the skills and talent and expertise that we have in Scotland. So looking for those areas where Scotland has something genuinely world-class to offer the world, and then targeting our approach to investors to use that to attract them is something we're going to be very focused on going forward. It's something I think that will be of great relevance to Italian investors, and I'm looking forward to having those conversations in more detail when we unveil the plan. So the answer to your question is, we don't know the impact, but it's something we were already focused on, and we've accelerated the delivery of those plans as a consequence of what's happened. The airbridge question is an interesting one, because there's a number of aspects to that. The responsibility for borders, of course, is a UK responsibility, so we work within those restrictions, but public health measures are something that's controlled within Scotland. The issue, frankly, has been that, for reasons best known to themselves, the UK government has taken to announcing changes and policy developments without first consulting with other nations of the UK. And it's not just Scotland, it's Wales and Northern Ireland are in the same boat. So the first we hear of these things is either when we read about it in the newspapers, or it's we're told that it's imminent immediately before it happens. So that makes it difficult, obviously, for us to understand the implications of those and to align ourselves. Within the current context, clearly we are having conversations with the UK government after they made that announcement, which isn't ideal, but those conversations have happened over the last day or so for us to understand the implications of that change, to understand it in the Scottish context, and then to understand how we respond to it. So we will respond to that very quickly. It's something that is important to business. It's something that's important to those who have family internationally. It's something that's important to individuals and families that want to go on holiday over the summer and understand how that plays out. So it's something that's high up on our agenda, and we will be responding to that in very short order with our perspective on how that should be taken forward.
Thank you very much, Minister. I'm afraid that our time is up. So I would like to, first of all, thank you very much for your precious contribution. It's been a pleasure to have you here tonight. I would also like to thank our partner, the COMITES, President Adriano De Marco, and of course the Consulate General of Italy for Scotland, Northern Ireland, and the Italian Consul Fabio Monaco. Thanks also to all our panelists tonight for your contribution. As you know, this is part of a series of webinars that we have been doing as Chamber of Commerce to support Italian businesses during these challenging times. So please go on following all the other webinars in the pipeline. And if you have any need any support from us, please feel free to contact the Scottish office based in Edinburgh. So thank you very much. I feel like this is it, and I'll see you very soon. Thanks again, Minister.
Okay. Grazie, arrivederci.
Thank you to you all. Bye. Bye-bye.